this is not for everyone. You know, if you have heard this within yourself, within the world, as they become the same, as you recognize the presence of communication that's beyond you, and it becomes a part of you simply by nature of the fact that you're hearing it. This is either a response to a prayer you have made to be the best person, to be the love that you know is possible, to give, to serve the earth, your family, this world, life, or it's a call that's being given to you because the earth herself knows that you're ready, that you can handle it, that you're needed. You are needed. And in order to handle the challenges that are put in your heart, you have to go to a certain depth that is not up to you to define. You lose the ability to characterize your own responses, your own prayers, characterize, to create, to script, to ask for this or that or the other. You lose that for a little bit as this injunction against your own power gets put into place, an injunction, a prevention of you taking over for a minute, for a moment, because you already took over by making the deepest prayer. You made the prayer to be more real, and now you have to let go and follow it. And it's a call that takes you beyond everything that you've known. I say this because I've seen too many people called into this. From 2002 to 2012, this is all I've followed. I don't know. I can't tell you a movie I watched during those years. I can't tell you who the popular musicians were. I didn't read books. I paid attention to almost nothing other than the calling, which is why it's my job to help tell you about it. It began with a dream. Now, I suppose it's difficult to say where anything begins, but I had a dream. I had a dream. In the dream, I was lost, had to go to a test in a class, and I didn't even remember where the class was held or what it was about. Since that time, I've met so many people who've had a similar kind of dream. It's because it's being given to us by the earth herself. It's being given to those of us who are trying to be our best, who are calling out for help, screaming our willingness to help, and then not knowing what to do next. And it was almost like a little insulting. It's like, I'm giving my whole self to being a good person, to being alive, to be loving, to being spiritual. I didn't even know where my classes were. I was doing yoga every day. I was doing so much yoga. I'm doing a great job. Then I had another dream like this, and I got a report card. And in the report card, I was getting an F in every class except phys ed, where I was getting an A in phys ed because I was doing yoga asana. I was doing the routines every day without learning anything deeper about the practice. So I, in the dream, realized that this was it was several times that I had a similar dream and that I was really obviously outside my depth. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know who to trust. And I felt that in the dream. And so in the dream, I made the choice to go visit the principal. And I visited the principal. And as I entered their office, the person stood and dissolved into light. The next day, I was participating on some discussion board and I saw a book called Living on Light. I bought it. It was totally extreme. It was by this woman named Jasmuheen. She's Australian. She's a breatharian. Doesn't eat food. And I poured through it and became convinced that this was my path. This is my calling. Over the next 5 years, I committed to being a breatharian over a dozen times. Each time, I would say it was happening now. The goal is to go 3 weeks with consciously fasting and just drinking water. And after 3 weeks' time, you retune yourself to the point where you don't need food. So something would happen, something within me would shift, and usually, quite frankly, an emotional challenge would arise for me. And my response would be, I'm going to live on light. In fact, it came to the point where any major high point in my life resulted in me saying, I'm going to live on light. I'm going to only breathe air and drink water. I didn't understand what was happening, and I kept falling back. So I think I made it 5 days, more times than I could count. And all the time, I wasn't just making it for 5 days without eating. I was going to stay that way for the rest of my life. And then something would happen, something would shift, and I'd be like, I'm too lonely. That'd usually be it. I'm too lonely. And I would feel signs. I would feel some smile. I would feel some care in a person around me that suggested, no, really and truly, I think it's a good idea to eat some food. And I would start eating food and I would forget about it. Over the course of this time, I went through therapy. And at the end of the 5 years, I uncovered a trauma. When I uncovered that trauma, I worked with healing techniques called EMDR, in particular with the therapist, in a way that it worked. It wasn't vague. I didn't become more effective at coping with my trauma. It left. It was put in its place. It healed. And the urge to be a breatharian almost completely disappeared. I'm telling you this because there are two things happening here, and we need to learn to see them both. People who have gone through extreme trauma can do something called spiritual bypassing. It means that you latch on to an extreme consciousness state. And when you're in that state, it creates distance from the pain. Particularly when you don't know that you carry a trauma, this is extremely attractive. In some ways, it's healthy. It gives you perspective and leverage so you don't feel crushed by the trauma. And when you don't know that you've been traumatized, when you don't know that you're carrying trauma within your body, it's very scary to confront its awakening, because it's not like it announces itself, oh, hi, I'm your repressed trauma. I'm going to teach you how to handle your life differently. It's like chaos in your mind. You can't think coherently. Your intentions break. Your consciousness and focus shift dramatically. You have a hard time talking to people right in front of you. You feel like you're not even in your body, because you're not. Trauma pulls you like a magnet because it wants to heal. But a trauma pulls you in a way that induces it to be re-experienced in a certain form. And if you don't remember the details, you don't know what's going on. You see and feel chaotic emotions within your mind's eye that drag you out of your presence. It can be very difficult to just have a normal conversation. You start acting erratically with other people in a way that's terrifying to all involved. And other people often make it much worse because they characterize you as crazy, and it goes in a worse circle. And so within those pressures, it's very attractive to have a goal. And when that goal is seemingly good, all the better. So when I found this goal, my belief was that I'd already encountered extraordinary consciousness states. I'm just slowing down because it's a big deal. This is not something I talk about. I encountered consciousness states on a regular basis that were extreme, and I lived with the sense that people didn't believe me. So I wanted to be a breatharian so people would believe me. That was one of the big motivations. I wanted people to believe that I'd been seeing real things all these years. I felt like it would validate me, it would vindicate all the choices I was making. And I don't know why I held that with such conviction, other than that it was just like tangible proof that the intangible was so powerful. If I could go days and days and days without eating, the intention is to not eat at all, people would be forced to recognize that reality is much different, much more extreme than we think. But more than that, it was giving me this distance from my pain, from the world around me, in a way that I didn't feel so broken. And it works. As soon as you commit to holding that particular dream of living on light, it starts to feed you. As soon as you commit, it attunes you. So there was this degree of spiritual guidance that I was following that was very real. It tuned me to the trust that consciousness exists beyond the body. Now, here's the beauty of this. Consciousness exists beyond the body. Consciousness exists without being born. And at the time, and this is 20 years ago, I didn't know that for sure. I wasn't fully convinced in multiple lifetimes that I had been born into a body as a spirit who remembered and could remember now. I didn't believe all those things, and getting my consciousness into a space where I could reference and recognize that these things are true mattered more than anything. There's a calling that's pulling people. Beneath the calling itself, beneath it, in the roots, is the earth. She's calling you to recognize that you're living in her. You're living in something that's hers, and that we're not really here. We aren't really present. We're in an in-between state. These are the movies on the plane ride into reality. All these stories that we live within, with electricity and grocery stores and college work fairs. These are all elevator music on the ride into the true reality. Being really awake involves listening more deeply. The true calling is to live. The true calling is to be fully present. The true calling is to be miraculous by every measure that we've been taught to understand. The true calling is to recognize the potential and the power of being alive on this earth, and to let it breathe you and live through you, to see color with the depth and the hue that it truly exists, to see and feel and breathe loving compassion wherever you go, to witness miracles and thus help them become more real, to witness love wherever you may go in every circumstance, especially the most frightening and most wounded and most painful. And all of this love is not possible when we are wounded. Its only purpose when we're wounded is to help us heal. You can't live it fully when you're wounded. So the beauty of the situation is that this call of the wild calls you to heal. It calls you to heal. But you have to believe that that's what's happening. If you are treated as if you are sick or crazy, if it's called an episode, you completely miss the opportunity that's available. There is a weather. There is a weather of the spirit in the world that passes through all of us. And as it changes and transforms, there are currents that sweep through that are accentuated beyond everything else. This is the call to which I refer. It becomes a moving grace within you, which says, now is the time to do more work. Now is the time when it is possible to face the pain that's within you. So do it. And if you're on that ride, you know it. If you've heard this call, you know it. And if you haven't, I invite you to be ready, because it sweeps through every community. It just sweeps over most people. If you don't raise your flag, it won't catch you. You have to say, this is me, this is what I want, but understand as you do, it pulls you beyond everything that you've known to be real. And you cannot prioritize your normal priorities anymore. You become the purpose, and you haven't lost control. This is true control. You made a prayer. You made a prayer to heal. You wouldn't be here if you hadn't. You made a prayer to heal. You made a prayer to transform. You made a prayer to be your best, to serve this life, to serve this love. You made this prayer. You did that. This is an answer to that prayer. I am orienting you. I am helping you to center in the truth of who you can be. I am a response to a prayer that you made, preparing you for reality exploding into life within you. And it might not look like anything you anticipate, but I assure you, it will go for the healing if it's necessary. It will spring into you, and it will pull you, and it will push you, and it will drag you into a position where you will actually be able to listen. And that means it will break your relationships. It will break your career plans. It will break your housing. And you have a choice. Do you say yes, or do you fight? Do you embrace it and ride, or do you struggle and regret? And I assure you, that choice is up to you. If you regret in any way, if you struggle to reclaim and put back the pieces of the life that are being broken apart, you won't see the wave that's calling you. You'll miss it. It will have shattered you, but then you'll be left adrift in between what you used to be and what you're trying to become. And I'm here to say, ride. Let it move you. There's an art to this. It doesn't mean act in whatever way occurs to you. It means be prepared to see the worst feelings within yourself. Be prepared to see the worst desires and violences. Don't act on them. But also don't go to work that day. Create space to deal with this. And you need help. And that help comes first in the form of a prayer. You pray for the help you need because you don't know. And you get taken a little deeper. Suicide lies here. You're dying. You're dying to who you used to be. You're dying to what you've known. That's what's happening. It's a death. Understand that it's not your body that is being asked to die. Understand that it is not your body. Is it? Are you stuck in between? Are you stuck thinking that you are your ego? Are you stuck not fully trusting? Because I can tell you in words, in this way and that, and again tomorrow, that it's not your body that's being called to die. It's your ego. It's yourself as you have been. And it has to be this way because the self you used to be didn't believe enough. Learning isn't always just a nice little ladder or staircase towards more. Sometimes it goes in bursts and plateaus or even dips. Sometimes things shatter, and some things have to shatter to get out of the way. If you have been born into a family, into a culture, into a life where you weren't even sure that Heaven exists where you're not even, you don't even know. Maybe there's life after this body. If that's you, if that's what you were born into, if that's what you're still surrounded by, the belief systems within you that believe that need to die. And it doesn't always look pretty. I pray that it's graceful for you. I promise you, you need to be prepared for otherwise. Maybe this has happened to you. You know what happens if it happens to you? It just keeps happening. The only difference is now you have a new relationship. Now you don't need to die in the same way. Now you just need to let go. It's like very small difference and magnificently huge difference. So this is a calling. It moves through the world. It's dancing over the planet like a living, breathing snake of life. And it moves through this community. And when it's here, it's not here. Now it's in several places at once, but it's moving. It's not everywhere at once. And when this calling sweeps through your community, physically, it's physically moving through the air along electric ley lines. Get ye to an electric focal point. Get yourself to a more vibrant location, and it'll happen. It'll pass through more often. And when it passes through, you'll be triggered. And when you're triggered, you will respond with the practice. How have you been practicing? This is what spiritual practice is for. You are practicing yourself. You are practicing yourself. You are practicing who you are. You are practicing in a way that puts you in a position to respond when these surges of life come into you. And you're pushed to do crazy shit. Don't kill yourself. Don't try to have sex with weird people. Don't get in a fight, particularly a violent fight. I discourage a lot of other choices that are seemingly extreme. My behest, my prayer for you is that you actually behave in a way that's awesome, that other people end up appreciating. But I also completely send you a light ball of protection. If you've acted very bizarrely in the past and have been accused of being psycho, if you do in the future, I love you and I care about you. I want you to be centered in such a way that you are an embodiment of the light of love that is meant to live on this earth. But I promise you, when this light comes in to you, it induces the worst to be on the surface. And it's purposeful. It's cleaning you. It's giving you an opportunity to reflect on the forces that you're always struggling with. Your shadows, your forgotten dreams, your resentments that you're just putting up with, the frustration that you feel on a daily basis because you're not in the right situation. If you are in a bad job where you're mistreated and this life force comes through you, it will surge to the surface and your frustration might come out in erratic and aggressive ways. You might say things that you seemingly regret, and I'm saying don't regret it. Get out. Number one, human beings have never been in a better position on planet Earth to be employed in a way that's good for you. Now, that might not be true exactly where you are, but right now, there are jobs all over the world that have never been opened before. The most menial work at restaurants, construction, menial not in a lesser sense, but straightforward work with your hands, making life function. 10% vacancy rates and all across the United States. And this is a problem all over the world, but it's a solution for many of you. Find a place where you're respected. Make that first. Put it first. Find a place where you are appreciated. Respect and appreciation are what you need the most when you're waking up. Who gives a shit if you're in charge? You don't need a title. You don't need the biggest salary. You need to be treated well. You need to be understood. If you need a day off, you need to be able to say, I feel terrible today. I have to take space. And you don't want to have to justify yourself too much. I'm saying this because it is paramount. People all over the world are feeling this call. And when this call stirs in you, you must be able to prioritize getting space and going on a walk. Last Thursday, I went on a walk for 5 hours in the woods. I sat for hours on benches. I would like get up and move from one bench to another. It was exquisite. I couldn't function. I couldn't participate in my family. I couldn't do my work. I had to go on this walk. You need to be in a position where you can do that when you need to. It doesn't happen much, might happen once a month. You need to be in a position where you can follow that and you don't get to schedule it. It's a calling. When it surges into you, I want to help you be ready. I want you to prepare for it. It's been passing over you, perhaps. It's been passing right by you, perhaps. Perhaps you've been having a difficult time and you haven't understood that this is what has been going on. I want you to be ready when it comes again and again, because it doesn't stop. And if you've been praying for it to stop, you've misunderstood that this is an answer to your prayers. This is an answer to your request to wake up, to heal, to be a bigger part of life. This is the answer. It hurts. It's scary. But the same force that is painful and frightening becomes exquisite when you learn how to be with it, when you learn how to heal and change yourself and your intentions, the thoughts you hold, and the way you respond to your feelings. When you transform these things in harmony, when you align them with life on earth in a much more effective way, the same currents that induce pain, that force you to face wounds, that make you erratic, the same forces become waves that you ride. Thank you for being here. If you have any questions or would like a reading, that's what I wanted to share. Medicine. Thank you. This is the work. I've been asked to take it up a notch. I'm going to be doing live feeds at least once a day, every day this week. We're going to see how that goes. I don't know what pattern it's going to settle into. I think I keep trying to make a new approach on YouTube and I keep trying to put a structure in it. And it's like, it just keeps changing. So we're going to see. The energy is surging through me right now. And this is what I'm going to do. And more importantly, I'm going to do ones like this. Like this is more an advanced class kind of energy. There's no way to do it on YouTube without just putting it out there. Anyone could watch it. So I'm going to say it like it is and let those who have ears hear. Embracing it for real. And I find it stunningly liberating to recognize that the same things that look devastating and terrifying and painful look that way because there were issues in me, that the root energy is beautiful. But I also find it, I think that the thing that scares me the most now is that these currents of change affect a lot of people. And I know for me, the contention that I dealt with at first, one of the most devastating moments in my life is I was with a friend. We were camping. And I started going deep. I felt pulled. I was going into the fire. I was feeling it. And she backed away and said, "It's happening to you again." And in that one moment, I lost the friendship. It really, really sucks. But in that one moment, I knew like what I was going through was being perceived through a lens of sickness. And it's taken decades for me to come into this peaceful awareness that recognizes the components, that there are these currents that are They're calling us into this wildness. They're calling us to live. They're calling us to take it to the next level. And that's evoking all these pains and passions within us. And they look erratic at first. It's not that it's good to be erratic. It's not that it's good to just live with trauma. It's not. But the reason it's coming into the surface is so we can get good at it, so we can deal with it. And in some cases, completely put to rest pain that's been with us for a long time. And it doesn't look pretty to deal with, but we live in this awful, awful, awful culture that says drug it, stop it, suffocate it, numb it. You're sick, shut up, be normal, calm down, calm down, calm down. And it's like, look, you might make a hole in the wall. I've made some holes in the wall in my day. And no, was that good? It's not that it was good to do it. It's that I had to get in touch with my feelings. I never punched someone. I encourage you to hold that boundary strong. But when you go through volatility along the way, just treat it as a challenge to get better at it, because you're becoming wilder. There's a moment in my life where 2012, really close to it was like December 2012, For those of you who know, that was a very critical time. And I was living in this cabin by myself, and no electricity, no heat. I just had a little wood stove, not much wood. It wasn't insulated. I was cold. I was like, fuck this. I can handle it all. I can live in the cold. I was just really fierce with it. And I remember one night, like, I was chanting and making concerts, and I would light one candle and make concerts and chant. And I got to this exquisite thing where I was like, release me. I was like screaming it musically. It was beautiful and fierce at the same time. I was like this intense creature, feeling the inhibition that we live within. And I was terrified of myself. And as long as I was afraid of myself, I couldn't channel it fully. I needed to, come to terms with it more. And the more I've come to terms with it, the more I'm like, oh my God, it is so sad that we fear ourselves in these ways. The earth has no desire for us to be killing each other. That's a function of dysfunction that happens because people don't learn and don't heal. And at a certain point, wars and fights and then wars result from such. And I think there's this awful reverse connection whereby when we repress something dramatically, addressing it gets blamed as the problem, when really it's the repression that's the problem. The only reason some of these forces become so vicious and become so reckless and difficult to channel, the only reason people lash out in extreme violence sometimes is because they have not had an ability to channel that energy in a more healthy way. And yet, still, it is normalized within our culture to say, stop that force, because that force is what became vicious. No, that force became vicious when it was out of balance, when it was hyper repressed. But that we blame wildness. We blame wildness. I live in this absurd system. There's a college up the hill from me, and there are fraternities. And their version of like initiating people is to get blitzkrieg drunk, try to fuck as much as they can, and then, maybe make it through. And that's called wildness. That's not wild. Animals don't behave that way. Human beings are the only idiots who act like that. Animals don't do shit like that. Animals don't fight with each other unless they have to. It's rare. And when you identify an animal that's reckless and violent on a consistent basis, they're sick. There's something wrong with that animal. The reason human beings behave like that regularly is because we're sick. We are not wild. We are out of touch with the passion of being in a body and the strength of being alive and remembering who we are. And when people really wake up, it doesn't look like a calm monk meditating all the time. I meditate a lot. I meditate for hours. I love it. I just refuse to imply that that is the lens through which you should see me. And I think that's tremendously problematic in the world we share. I found it necessary to address this on a regular basis, and I suppose I'll stop when I feel like it's thoroughly addressed. Well, I don't know. I don't know if I would use the word taming. I never want to misuse your contribution, or just like react against it. But my experience personally, like I've had a fair amount of sex under interesting circumstances sometimes. I've gone through a fair amount of indulgence, done hallucinogens more times than I can remember. And ultimately, I didn't find fulfillment in those things. But I don't regret it. It's not like I pushed it to the point where I suffered so much. Like I had a degree of restraint within it. So, I was like, I didn't want to suffer unduly. So I made fairly decent choices. And after a certain time, it was like, okay, well, what's the best way to channel this energy day to day? So it's like I've always been I haven't been rejecting my desire. I've been going with it. And I think that's the fear that people have of being wild. Being wild implicitly means get in touch with your feelings and desires. If you're going to get in touch with your feelings and desires, like this is simple. I'm telling you that your desire is never what you think it is. So if you have an image in your head of killing someone, your desire isn't to kill them. You have a desire underneath that. Don't kill them. Don't act even assertively aggressive with them because you don't know what the fuck's going on yet. But also don't just suffocate that feeling. There's a message under there. There's something happening there. And you need the power beneath it. And that power, maybe this is taming. I don't know. Perhaps I'm reacting against tame, wild, I don't know if it's taming, but it's certainly channeling, right? Like there's this ability to say, we're going this way. We're not directing it like that, but you're also not stopping it. You're turning. You're going around the violence and the devastation. You're rechanneling it. And you're keeping it in you. You're keeping it alive. You're keeping the strength. I have tried at this point in my life to turn it down, and it doesn't work. Like I'm finding like my yoga's coming up a notch again, and I'm having to do these multiple hour-long intense practices. And when I don't do it, I feel so fucking tense because it's like my muscles in my shoulders, like I need to use them in these ways. And if they don't get used, I start to like hunch and like, so I think this is intrinsic in the fear of it. When you go into your depth, when you own it, you can't go back. You can't. But that doesn't mean you can't be in the world. You're more in the world. You're more of the world. You can walk right through. People don't bother me nearly as much as they used to. People I have static with don't start shit with me. I just smile at them and look in the eyes. I'm like, you sure? And I've never hit someone in my life. My presence says we're not going to fight like that. I don't have anything to hide from. When you embody your wildness, people know it. They know it. Yeah, absolutely. And I think the challenge here is that we've been taught to believe that our carnal instincts are somehow opposed with spiritual enlightened presence. And I'm suggesting not at all. They're designed to be aligned. They're designed to work together. But we have a lot of baggage to work through. And the dominant message I've been getting all weekend, like I did like 7 live feeds last week, and I pulled some of them down and left up the ones that felt right. And then I'm like, all right, what am I going to do this week? What am I going to do this week? And over again, I'm just getting the strong message, like, fight more. I'm like, fight. I don't want to fight. Da, 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 da. And it's like, no, really? Fight. And what I'm fighting with sucks. I really don't like what I have to fight with. But what I'm fighting with are the preconceptions about what spirituality is. We live in this world that polarized spirituality, separated it out of our lives. Multiple spiritual traditions treated spirituality as something that exists elsewhere, right? And so we recorded the monks, they're the spiritual ones, the ascetics, they're the spiritual ones, and then everyone else is normal. I promise you, we're being called into a world where everything is spiritual, where everything about our lives is invested, imbued, filled with this sense of spiritual presence. But what does that look like? Well, when I look to the names, the answers that are present already, that have become famous answering these questions, they're saying shit that's wrong. Wrong. Millions and millions of views on this one dude who says never drink alcohol. And he's wrong. He's just wrong. He says alcohol is something, I'm not naming people. I'm just saying, I'm attacking the idea. Alcohol is something that damages your consciousness. Therefore, why would you do something that damages your consciousness? It's completely out of alignment with the truth of this world. Alcohol kills parts of ourself. It's true. And when it's time for aspects of ourself to die, have a drink. How do you learn that? There's a rhythm to it. There's a rhythm. Some of it's predictable. Graduations are a good time to have a little drink. I don't drink a lot. I actually broke my boundaries and had 4 drinks on my birthday this year. And that was, well, I was fine. It's probably a bit much. I didn't have the best night's sleep, but I almost never have more than 2. And usually 1 drink does exactly what I need. And it's not even, maybe once a week. Sometimes more, usually less. I'm saying that just for perspective. But within that, man, I think it was extremely healthy that I drank a lot during periods in my life because I learned how to deal with it. I learned how to be with it. I learned how to change. I learned how to transform. I learned where my limits were. I think it's very naive to presume that any of the basic gifts of the earth are wrong. I love kombucha. It's awesome stuff. It's awesome stuff. I'm not, I have all respect and compassion for people with challenges with alcohol. It's devastating. My assertion is that people with challenges with alcohol don't actually have challenges with alcohol. They have challenges with trauma. They have something under that that's wounded. I'm recording something that I want to stop and see if you're okay.
She whacked me in the face here with like the tip of a really hard watering can. It was hard to, yeah. It was so not worth it. But
I'm so sorry, Tor.
they don't have us over for a barbecue sometime right on the weekend.
That sounds great. Ah, all of that gone. Oh, that sucks. I just saw it. Bless you guys. I turned off my mic and I didn't turn it back on. You know what? I was going on too long about it. So you could help me because I've done this a fair amount in the past and I usually delete it. And my challenge is that I didn't go through it. Thank you. Thank you, medicine. I didn't go through what I need to go through. I still live a little bit in fear of judgment for what I'm sharing here and for what I need to share on a regular basis. And because I'm not resting in it, I think you guys haven't been able to fully trust me, whether you put it that way or not. I don't like the sense that I have to fight with people. And in truth, I don't want to fight with people, but I do think I have to fight with ideas. And the ideas are as follows. There's a particular kind of spiritual enlightenment, and there's a better or worse to it. And true spiritual people in this form are better than other people, and that their version of spirituality applies, essentially to the rest of us, to all of us. The irony of this is often I think they're some of the people who are most wrong. First of all, there is a long list of the most respected gurus from the past 100 years who have slept with their students in very unhealthy situations. Meaning it's not just that they slept with their students, but they left the fucking students spun out and sick. And a long list of the most amazing gurus did this shit. So how is it that they're coming out of the same traditions that are saying things like don't have sex at all? It's all part of the same thing, and you have to be able to criticize it that way. The Roman Catholic priests are easy to address, but we still don't talk about it. And the point is, I don't think we dig deep enough as a human race to say, guess what? It's wrong. It's wrong. The problem is that they're repressing too much, and then it comes out in this darkness. They're repressing into the darkness something that comes out and grabs in chaos. And really, they aren't the people we think they are, and they never have been. I've never met a single person who embodied some kind of done state where they're just done. Nobody's done. You're never fucking done. You always have more work to do. You always have more humbling to take. You always have more starting over and relearning and being confused and asking questions. Anybody who suggests that they're done is a problem. That's been my experience. And there's no writer, no one who I hear about in interviews, no one who has existed who just says they're done, who I believe in. And in the same regard, there's only one thing that I can recognize from all my reading and all my personal experience. There's only one thing that I can recognize as enlightenment that makes sense. And it's a certain way in which light comes into you. That's happened to me. And it dissolves a lot of lies. It does. But there's a reason this quote, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. It dissolves a lot of lies. It's still up to you to live. You still have to do all the work. You're not burdened by a certain range of lies. I'm not burdened by a certain range of lies. It liberates me in a lot of ways. It's very special. And a fair range of people who claim to be enlightened gurus share stuff that's bullshit. And you have to be able to say no to them. There's a reason so many Americans went to India, went to China, learned from gurus in the mountains, came back and fucked with everybody, literally and figuratively, took too much money, exerted too much control. It wasn't right. They weren't correct. They were channeling intense energies, but an intense energy, that's all it is. It's an intense energy. It doesn't mean it's better than you. There are lots of ways people get in touch with intense energies. And all they have to do is say, this is the best. And they can design a bunch of people around that. But the reality is, it's just another intense energy. It's a configuration of consciousness that may or may not be a loving way to live. And it may be loving for a while and then be tweaky in other ways because it's not fully at peace with itself. Yes. And that's where this runs. That's where this goes. The answers, the questions that I've asked and held, and the questions that I ask you to hold are not possible to hold if you create restrictions against a wide range of behavior. First of all, you become a more beautiful person as you take care of yourself. And as you become a more beautiful person, other people like you more. And so you're going to have to deal with being in the world in one way or another. You're going to have to deal with the impact you have on others. And, in some forms, like that makes you literally attractive. So you're going to have to deal with that. And, pretending that anyone's like Gaia has a way of humbling folks. Like a Gaia has a way of humbling folks. Like no one's beyond desire. No one's beyond sex. No one's beyond lust. And they're not lower thoughts and feelings. As you enlighten yourself, as you become more at peace with the most extreme spiritual presence in you, you can tune that in with your body and it's exquisite. But that's neither better nor worse. It just means you're still a part of this. You're still a part of this story. And she wants us to be a part of this story. And that's why I'm inviting this understanding of going wild to replace many goals you might have, because going wild means being at peace. To me, it's a beautiful and elegant shift. Wild animals, really, they're very, very smart. They don't start any fights that they don't need to start unless they get very sick. The only time wild animals start fights recklessly is because they're sick. Oh, they'll fight to protect their young, and they'll fight to protect territory if they need it. But more often than not, they just jockey, they just shift. If they have enough to eat, enough space to run, they don't really want to fight. And yet we've associated wildness with this, like, no, don't let the negative, strong feelings out. Well, you know why it's so dangerous? Because they were so repressed that if you let them out, they become explosive. It's a simple circle, and I don't think we could go through it enough, because we're cleansing ourselves and preparing ourselves. You get in touch with your fierceness, you learn to channel it more effectively in a more healthy way. And you get strong. You get strong and you start wanting to use it. You get strong in your heart. You start needing to use it. And you start finding yourself in extreme situations in a way that you can help. You can help. And it becomes clearer and easier to understand and recognize what role you're being asked to play. But it all starts with this call. And I started this somewhat poetically, and I hope we can kind of end gracefully in such a way as well. But there's a call, and it's reaching to get you. It's more than an invitation, because it's a living embodiment. I can see it in people's faces. I know when someone's touched by this, it's easy for me. And there are currents in the world, and you're being invited to participate. The more you pay attention, the more you embody it, the more you can hold it, the more it lives as part of you. Thank you, medicine. That's what I'm being told within, is that, I'm an antidote for a lot of this bullshit. And blessedly, it's not me. It's a part of me. It's attending. It's a light that wants to live through me and through you, through others. And it is, I look forward to what happens with this, because we're being asked to bring a power to life in the world. And the more we do it effectively, the more it forces us to heal. And then it calls us again. And there's this beautiful, beautiful space where you're preparing, you're practicing, you're honoring this day to day, and you're setting yourself up. And then the current comes through the world and it passes by you, and you're there, you're ready to ride it. And in those moments, once I drove a car, and I was driving on dirt roads in Arizona, and it had rained a lot and the road was really wet. And I was starting to realize, when I went slow, I started to slip off the road. I had to go faster to stay on the road. And I had to be really focused. That's what we're talking about here. I want you to practice so you're ready when this comes in. And when it comes in, you'll know it. You want to keep your zone. You want to keep your focus and awareness. You want to practice to be ready for this kind of life to come into you. And when it does, don't think there's anything else above you. There's nowhere else to be. You got to believe it. If you think that somewhere else is better, if you think that being someone else, emulating some other path is better, you won't be able to be it. You need your whole self together in you. And that means accepting you're an angel and a creature right here in this human body. That's what being a human, a true human, really is. That's what we're invited to believe. I'm going to do this every day this week. I really appreciate your presence. Take your space whenever you need to. Every day is a lot. I love you guys. I truly do. And I want to find where my edge is, where I can do my best work. I hope you're brought a little closer to that by this as well. Much love be with you and your families.